Welcome to Lead From Within, the podcast for people leaders that explores the fascinating intersection of mental health, leadership, and performance. What is the role of a board in a large organization around well-being? And I guess that links to the ESG topic, and the S is probably underreported in many boards around the world in today's world. But what do you think is, if we go from 2024 over the next 5 years, what would you imagine the role of the board and perhaps data is in relation to this topic?
Nick, such a great question, and I feel very passionately about it. I do believe that while there's been so much of focus on E and G, S hasn't received the kind of focus and attention it deserves. And I've always said, when you talk about S in terms of data in boards and in management team, very quickly it defaults to risk management. So a lot of the S data pertains to, let's quote employee relations case numbers, let's just talk about. And I actually feel the real opportunity is moving S to pro-social behavior. So move away from just risk management to pro-social behavior. Mm-hmm. And that move away to pro-social behavior, that to me also goes to the heart of this idea of employee advocacy, is boards asking a very different set of questions. So thinking about organizational health in a much more holistic way. And I'll give you an example. We rolled out Microsoft Workplace Analytics. So we get a huge amount of data on how work gets done, how people collaborate with each other. But we also get now data on the kind of hours people are keeping. Are there pockets where people are doing excessively long hours of work? Are they... And actually, how we bring that data to the board to try and correlate it to productivity performance, but also other indices which correlate to the overall organizational health of the company is absolutely critical.
You spoke about thinking strategically. If you're looking forward, let's say to 2030, what do you imagine the world of Cognizant looking like in 2030? And perhaps more broadly, what do you imagine the world of HR looking like in 2030 in comparison to today?
It's such a big question. And so some of it's not known, right? So that's the first thing. We have to be comfortable with the unknown, Nick, first of all, right? And adjust. And I think with disruptive technologies like generative AI, we need to make sure that we're agile, because what we know today will change next year. But what we know is that we're going to become much more productive. So we will be able to do with co-pilots and things like that much more. And so the idea is that we can provide so much more value. We have a lot of companies that are looking to service providers like Cognizant and others to help them think this through. So not only are we disrupting ourselves, but we're helping companies as they're going through this disruption. So I think that that's going to continue to be a theme for the next 5 years, maybe faster. When we moved, from a technology to the cloud, which everybody is very familiar with, it happened at a certain pace. And I think the prediction is that generative AI will be faster. So what's interesting about technology, it keeps becoming faster. So we can definitely see that will be a continuous theme. I think we're going to see the emergence of a lot more different types of jobs and different pathways into technology. So technology now, if you think about ChatGPT, it's available to everybody in the world, right? And so, you previously had to be a programmer or somebody who is fairly technical to get access to information that now is at the fingertips of everyone. So, and we're just at the very beginning. So I think that it's going to be an exciting time. It'll be a time where companies have to remain agile. And there'll be companies that are early adopters and, people that are in the middle, and then other industries that maybe don't, adapt over time. But I think everybody will take advantage of this. And I think it's capitalizing on this. And making sure that we do it in an ethical, responsible way. So I think we all hear about ethical AI and making sure that the human in the loop, there's always going to be judgment, right? So, it's making sure that associates or employees in general understand where their positions, is still very, very important, right? So technology enables things and makes things simpler and faster, but nothing will replace human judgment in the end. There'll always be something that requires humans.
2 questions. Do you see well-being and becoming more strategic now? And do you see the CHRO role becoming more strategic within companies because of the recognition of the importance of well-being?
Too soon to tell on the latter, but I absolutely think I'll give you an example of why I think, yes, HR is becoming more strategic. And it's from the Times, not because it's perfect, but because obviously I know the details of it. I'm sure there's other really great work elsewhere. But our total rewards leader recently brokered a partnership with the DART Institute. And the DART Institute works with journalists because there is a specific kind of trauma for journalists who are in war zones or who have a beat that's ghastly and gory and not on the bright side of reporting, right? And has upgraded our standard issue employee assistance program to now include a component that's specific to journalists and their craft.
Mm-hmm.
That's strategic. Everybody has the EAP in this country. Like you get no points for that. But to really think about what are the component pieces of that EAP. Even our counseling providers, we've done a lot of work to make sure that we have a diverse set of clinicians on our roster, because the data tells us that I'm more likely to seek help if the person providing that help looks like me. I can make some assumptions about them understanding where I am in my life. So yeah. And I think that all of those things are proof points of, yeah, you can even take stale things that we've done forever and think about them more strategically. It doesn't even require new thinking. It just means optimizing what you already have in your toolkit.
The key thing I think we need to be doing around educating leaders, which needs to be broader. It needs to be, how do we help leaders to listen better? I mean, it's remarkable how people can't actually listen. We don't teach it, and it's not as simple as, it's not intuitive in the way that people believe it might be. There's an amazing book which I've recently been reading, which is How to Know a Person by David Brooks, and it really digs into
Yep.
how you can actually know someone well. But it's very linked to this idea to creating psychological safety, because to know your people, you have to, no one will become known in a non-safe environment, because you're shut up the every security system you have internally to prevent people getting to you. But in a safe environment, you can be known, and similarly you can feel safe to be creative and do your best work, etc. What's your relationship with the term psychological safety, or do you think we're getting that right at the moment?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I just wanted to reflect on your really, really great point on capacity to listen. It's a skill which needs to be cultivated, and particularly in the well-being mental health space, very often half or the majority of the solution is just being a benevolent witness to someone and being fully present, and them feeling that you are available for them, and that can be cultivated. And that's the conditions to establish that, to bridge more directly to your question, is really creating a context of psychological safety. At the Lego group, we, which I think we may have discussed before, our leadership culture and our leadership framework is referred to as the leadership playground. And we have this notion that leadership is for all. It's not just for people leaders. Given the world that we live in, all of us are leading different teams, whether it's a small team, a cross-functional team, or a direct organization hierarchically. And we say the ultimate purpose of leadership is to energize everybody every day. But to enable that, you need to create the context, which is psychological safety. So it's a prerequisite. We don't call it out explicitly because it could also become quite academic. So that's why we use the metaphor of the leadership playground, which for us, maybe the bridge to what I was sharing at the beginning of the conversation, that children are our role models. So it's so nice to have this metaphor that we could all relate to as children, going to the playground where we felt free enough. It was a controlled environment, but it was an environment that allowed us to pursue the behaviors that we think are important to leadership, to be brave, to be curious, to be focused. So that's how we position this notion of psychological safety in the environment.
I would love to ask about the future of work from your perspective. There's a transformation going on around us with AI. There is all sorts of predictions about the future of work from a hybrid perspective, the introduction of virtual reality, all of these kind of extraordinary ideas, which seem once upon a time to have been the future, are now quickly approaching the modern world. What's your prediction for the future of work at IBM and some of those trends?
Yeah, so look, AI is here, and AI is going to be a platform that is going to change all of our jobs. Doesn't mean that all of our jobs are going to go away. In fact, I predict that very few jobs are going to be completely eliminated. The bigger challenge that is ahead of us on AI is if all of our jobs are going to change, how are we getting skilled for that? Are we prepared for that? I think of AI is a platform, a tremendously powerful platform. It is like the internet. It is like email. It's going to be how we all get our jobs done. And so I think that's a big piece of it. And again, if I think about well-being, there's maybe two pieces that we should think about when we think about AI. One is there is this innate fear of job loss. And that certainly affects many people who are scared that that will happen. And so I really encourage all organizations to be very clear with employees about how AI is transforming jobs in their company, to give some maybe relief to employees that, hey, small pieces are changing. And with the time you free up, here's what we want you to do about it. You know, if AI is helping you save an hour in your job in the next 12 months, here's where you should spend that hour. Here are the skills that are important instead. So giving people this roadmap, I think really takes down the temperature a little bit around the fears of AI. I'm also really excited. The thing that AI allows is it does allow massive customization. And so I think we all know, there are a lot of well-being platforms out there, and they are part of the toolkit to help people get, these global in the hands of an individual. My hope is that a lot of these platforms start to adopt AI components to them so that their offerings, things that are targeted, can be very different. What I see on a platform is very specific to what I need versus what you see in the platform. And so I know there's a lot of scared people out there. I know there are a lot of people that are really apprehensive and a little doomsday about AI, but I think it can help us unlock some of this human potential. It doesn't replace it.
Can I ask you before we're coming up to time, but I'd love to get your sense on the future of work and what you're thinking about for WPP, but also what you think the future of a chief people officer is in the world of work in the next few years. And there's obviously lots to talk about AI, etc. Like, how are you feeling about the future, and what do you think is coming?
I love at times, although he's controversial at times, Professor Scott Galloway, he always say, and I'll use the quote often, AI won't replace you, but someone that knows how to use AI will. So it's our job as incumbent on me to make sure the whole of our workforce understands how generative AI will help them either do their core skill, their media production, creative, PR, commerce skill, or how it helps someone interviewing pull together resumes, sense check it against a profile, pull in other data and do an interview sheet for them. I mean, you can do that super quick using our tools. So that's massive. One, so there's the reskilling, upskilling and reskilling, I think is really important. And then there's actually the overall shape of the workforce. So if we're classically a triangle in media, but an hourglass in PR, what are those shapes going to look like in the future? And actually, probably we still need junior people coming in. It might be the middle level that gets squeezed, but how how do the middles then become a trusted advisor at the senior level of the organization if they haven't been at the middle? So there's quite a lot of things to work out. And it's not, so I think there's never been a more interesting or exciting time to understand the shape and the impact of the workforce. And I guess we're bullish right now. So when we did our Capital Markets Day, we're estimating still the same number of people as a base case, because we will reskill, train, and find new jobs for our colleagues. And actually what we should be doing is expanding our addressable market with the jobs that we will do, because we are nothing if not inventive and creative. So keeping those levels of optimism is really important to us, but then upskilling people, because that's the one thing that they really need in order to do better. So I think that's crucial. And then I think the other thing, which I alluded to when I joked about my age, because every so often I get it wrong and call myself a Gen Z, which clearly I'm not. I'm a Gen X. Thinking about Gen Zs. And Gen Alpha is just really understanding that how they want to show up to work and what they want to get out of work is very different to you or I, Nick. And neither one is good or bad, but I sort of joke that, you know, I'm the idiot working every hour God sends, or thinking it's normal at the weekend to take a call or to do some stuff or travel on. To me, that's just normal, and that's how I succeed and thrive in my job, because I love my job. But you know, there are a lot of people who definitely want to finish at 5 and find it odd that we would expect or ask them to do a bit more work than that. And when we think about mobility and moving people around our organization and tenure, you know, I've been at WPP now 14 years. There are some people who have been there longer, but I think the tenures are getting shorter. So we're going to have to get our head around more project-based work. And I think that's going to be a big shift. And it's quite a challenge to the infrastructure or the way that we're set up or how we charge out people as well. So I think that a huge generational attitudinal shift, which I think COVID accelerated to some degree. And I think the mental health, mental wellness challenge also is a contributing factor to that. It just means the expectations or the demands of work are very different and fascinating.
It really is fascinating. Hearing you talk about the intergenerational piece reminds me of what you were talking about earlier, which is that really important of knowing and of listening and of trust. And there needs to be that intergenerational listening and intergenerational trust and knowing. You know, those are so important, because you're right, it's not right or wrong. It's about, you know, evolution and how do we evolve together. And then as you were talking about AI, I just loved the humanity that was coming through in it. This idea that actually what AI can do is perhaps allow us to be more human. Perhaps it will take away some tasks that otherwise were overwhelming.
Absolutely.
And give us more time. And peak performance is operating at 80%, not at 120%. So perhaps giving people that ability to get some time back for themselves, which will allow that humanity to come through again, which I find really inspiring. In the field of mental health care and healthcare more broadly, I think AI has an incredibly important role in helping to ensure people get the right care at the right time in a way that speaks their language, culturally is appropriate, and is affordable to be delivered as well. So I think the utility of AI within healthcare is incredibly important and exciting, but that humanity can be accentuated through AI in the workplace. And I love that idea. I'm going to very near the end of the conversation, Andrew. I'm incredibly grateful for all of your insights and time. I guess my final question, coming back to the topic of mental health in the workplace, is what are your hopes for the future of workplace mental health over the coming years?
Destigmatizing mental health, right? It's always had this stigma, okay? Everybody deals with mental health in some capacity. To me, that's a fact, right? It doesn't affect some, it affects all. And from my perspective, anything that we can do to provide tools and channels and awareness, right? Whether it's the Unmind tool that obviously we're so very proud that we have, whether it's some of our EAP tools, whether it's the ERGs that we create that just allow opportunities for employees to engage and share some of their perspective, right? For me, we need to really allow for channels for employees to engage, share their stories, know that there are other people in the workplace that are feeling or dealing with some of the same things that they're dealing with. And with that awareness, right, and with that commonality and trust among colleagues, then I think it allows people to really recognize that they're not in it alone. They absolutely have resources that can help them. And it'll be a continued evolution for Viatris, as I'm sure it will be for many other companies too, right? Yeah. I mean, for me, our employees are our greatest asset. We are well aware of that. We've got great products. We've got over 1 billion patients that we touch worldwide with our products on an annual basis. But at the end of the day, if our employees aren't at their best, if they're not healthy, if they're not engaged, if they're not productive, really that's where then the company falters. And we're fully committed from a leadership perspective, through an HR perspective, to continue to evolve all of our offerings from a health and well-being perspective, specifically mental health, to ensure that the awareness is there, the education is there, and there are outlets and tools for people to leverage to ensure that they too can find their balance, as we mentioned earlier in our dialogue.
Thank you for listening to Lead From Within, brought to you by Unmind. Subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Leave us a like and please do review if you found it valuable. Follow Unmind on LinkedIn for updates on all things regarding leadership, performance, and well-being. To find out more about Unmind's workplace well-being solutions for enterprise businesses, please go to unmind.com. That's unmind.com. Thank you and see you next time.